Today we're going to talk about notability. Notability is the most important tool that you're going to use on your iPad, and that's because teachers are going to be sending you content in Schoology. Once you get content, most of the time it's going to be in the form of a PDF. Once you have that PDF, when you touch it, it's going to ask you, do you want to open this in Notability? Once you do that, it's going to launch Notability, and this is where you're going to store all of the files that teachers send, as well as work on homework and work on different files that you can then turn back into your teacher. So to start out, to find Notability, I usually just swipe down from the center. I type in NOT, and that shows me that there's an app called Notability. If I touch it, it's going to open the Notability app. The first thing you're going to notice is that I have lots of folders. It is critical that you create these folders, be the first thing that you do. And to do that, it's pretty simple. You just hit the little plus symbol, and you have two options, create subject and create divider. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a subject. Once I touch that, it's going to say, what's my subject name? I am going to call it lunch, and then click done. The name already exists because I already have a lunch apparently. So why don't we do this? Let's call it band. Once I've done that, it creates a folder called band. The beauty of this is that I've already created my classes. So what you're going to need to do is create a science class, social studies, language arts, math. Once all your folders have been created, all files that you get from your teacher automatically get dropped into the all notes folder. So the best thing to do is to get used to every time you get a new note and it goes into all notes, you need to organize your file. So if you know that this is going to be a social studies, like this Continental Quest file right here is going to be a social studies folder or a social studies file, what you can do is if you touch your finger to the piece of paper, not the title of the thing, of the note, the piece of paper, I can move it and I can drop it into whichever folder I'd like. So that's just a good note. You'll see I have 35 in my all notes. I have 3 in my unfiled notes. So if I look through my unfiled notes, I know I have to take this one and I need to put it where it needs to go. So let's see, this one goes in PE. And then it disappears. So I have 35 notes, I have 2 unfiled, and then it shows me what I've got in each one. Often when you get notes, they don't have specific names, so you can always rename them. And that's just by clicking on the note and then going right up to the top and renaming it right there. So no matter what it comes to you as, you can always click on it and then you can delete it and you can rename it. Okay, I'm going to hop back over. Since I'm in my note, you'll see in the upper left-hand corner I have a little library. I can touch my library and that takes me right back to the beginning. And I've got all of my folders. The number one thing you have to do after you have created your classes, in the bottom left-hand corner you'll see a gear. If I touch that gear, I notice that I can set it for auto backup. So auto backup is highlighted. I have some options, Dropbox, Google Drive. We recommend you use Google Drive. Mine has a gear next to it, which means it was already set up, but once you click on Google Drive, it should prompt you to log into your Google username and password. And then you have some important options. So you'll see right here that in my Google Drive settings, it's set to create a folder called Notability. That means that if I look on Google Drive later, and I will see a notability folder there and all my notes will be there. This is good because if anything happens to your computer or to your iPad, you'll be able to just download those notes directly back out of your Google Drive app and it will refill your notebook. So that's super important. The next important thing is where you see file format. Many of you, I think by default it says PDF. The problem with doing it that way is if you have it saving as a PDF, you cannot manipulate the data. So let's say you put lots of notes on your notability onto a PDF. If you have that to back up as a PDF instead of a note, those notations that you've made on the piece of paper that you have will not be able to be changed. So I suggest that you leave the file format as note. So here's some of the other options. So PDF I think is the default. You want to make sure that your backup is going to note. Please do not forget to do that. I have way too many 6th graders last year who had forgotten to back up to their Google Drive and something happened to their iPad and everything that they had stored in Notability was gone. So please, make your folders first. After you've made your folders, click on that gear and make sure that you set it to back up to Google Drive. So moving on from there, we're going to look at some of the things on top. So on edit for my toolbar, what I can do is if I touch that edit window, and you have different options that you have. So each of your folders, if you want to change the color, the icon, if you want to password protect, which we do not recommend, you have some options there. I'm going to undo that. The next button over is you can share your notes with other people. So that's an option. That's a send to option. So in the specifics, if I open a folder and I take a note, I've done that. It's saying, where do I want to share it? I can go ahead and I can open in another app if I wanted to, which is very cool. We don't have iPad set up to print yet. We're actually reluctant to let you guys print because we'd like you to share everything digitally. I can send it to Google Drive. I can send it to Dropbox. I can email it. So there's lots of different options. So the first thing you would always have to do is choose the note that you want to send and then hit that button. Okay, I'm not going to share anything, so I'm going to click back there. We talked about the plus. That's how you add your folders. If I want to do a search, so if I'm in all notes, I can do a search, and I can just start typing, and it's going to find me information that I need. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. This is a very important one. This is if you want to pull things down from Google Drive. So let's say you have a document that you've typed in Google Drive and you want to drag it into Notability. All you would do is hit that down arrow. You could go to Google Drive. It would show you all the items in your Google Drive, and documents that you've typed usually can be pulled directly down. If you want to create a new note, which is what many of you are going to do, oh, by the way, you can also sort all your all notes by name, by the date modified, and the date created. Okay. So in this case, I want to create a new note. And if you look in the upper right-hand corner at the pencil, if I touch that new note, it brings me to a blank page. The first thing I always like to do is rename that page. So I'm going to call this one Test Note. Okay, when I hit done, you'll notice at the very top, it says Test Note. Now, many of you are going to use this for, and some people use it to type. If you hit that T, you are going to be able to type. Just touch there, and you've got some items on the bottom, so I can type. Okay. And I can use some of my options. I can also paste in. I can jump back. I can change color. I can do all kinds of different things. The problem with Notability that some people have is if you're typing on a PDF, Notability always wants to start your text on the left side of the screen. But what you can do is if you hold your finger down on it, you can add a text box. And the nice part about this is that once I've created that text box, I can now move that wherever I want. So if your teacher sends you a PDF and there's a bunch of lines that you're going to have to put the text in, it's never, if you just go to type the text, it's never going to go where you need it. But if you create a text box first, you'll be able to put that text wherever you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to move on and go to the next one, and this is the pencil. The cool part about the pencil is if I hold my finger on that pencil, I can choose the thickness of my pencil. I can choose what it looks like. I can choose a different color. Once I've done that, I touch the paper and I can write. Same thing with the highlighter. If I click on my highlighter, I can touch it, I can change the color, and I can highlight directly onto my note or to a PDF that my teacher has sent me. Next one is the erase. The cool part of the erase key is, let's say, I just drag my finger across what I want to erase and let go. So every item that you add to a note becomes sort of like a layer. So what it'll do is it'll delete layer by layer. So when I can do that, it erased the layer of highlighting I did. The scissors tool in Notability is also really helpful. What you can do with that is, let's say you're writing. The scissors tool allows you to move around anything that you've written. And this is why we talked about earlier why it's so important that you back up, or when you were backing up your Notability, that you're backing it up as a note and not a PDF. If you're backing it up as a note, any kind of notations that I've drawn on my page will still be able to be manipulated if for some reason everything goes away and I need to download everything back. So what the scissors tool allows you to do is circle an item that you've drawn only, not text. And once I click on it, I can do different things to it. So the important part is I can now move it, which is really, really important. Because again, if you save it as a PDF, these things are locked in for good. You also have different options. I mean, you can change the color. So if I originally drew this in pink, if I want to now draw it in purple, and I want to make it a little bigger, I can do that. Once I click off of it, it's done. I can move anything that I've drawn and manipulate it. So the scissors tool is really important. One of the best tools in Notability that not everybody knows about is the magnifying glass in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You'll see it has a Z in it. That will not show up if the tool at the top is chosen as the text box. So you'll notice that when I choose on the T to type a text box, that magnifying glass disappears. Yet when I click on that pencil, that text box or that box appears, and there's my magnifying glass. So like we said earlier, if I'm writing back to my teacher, and if we look right here, and I want to add some text right here, there's not a whole lot of room to write. Let me erase that. So let's say I want to add something right there where it says draw an image of square ABCD, but I want to fit it in that small area. If I click off the T and I choose the pencil and I touch that magnifying glass, it creates a text box. What I can do is I can put that text box right where I want it. So it magnifies that area. And now what I can do with my pencil, I can write, oops, my pencil is way too big. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit. I'm going to make it really small. And let me erase that. So now I want my pencil. I made sure it's small. So I want to say number this. Okay, when I touch off of it, I have now, let me get back out, I have now written something in my regular handwriting in a very, very tiny area. You'll find that you guys are going to use this all the time because a lot of times when a teacher has a worksheet or something that they're sending you, there's not a whole lot of room to write where you need it. And this tool comes in super handy. Let's say that I'm in Schoology, and in my class, my math rotation class, apparently my teacher has sent me a bunch of different items. So these are PDFs waiting for me to download. What I would do is I would touch the PDF my teacher sent me, and then once I have it open, I notice it's a PDF, but in the upper right-hand corner, I see an arrow. I'm going to touch that arrow, and it's going to give me some options. Almost all the time, you guys are going to choose Open in Notability. So what that's going to happen is it's going to launch Notability. And obviously, this is a new piece of information your teacher has sent. So what you want to do is create a new note. So what happens is it's going to say, do you want to read? So this particular document has 21 pages. It's going to ask me, do you want to import all 21 pages? And of course, I want everything that my teacher sent me, so I'm going to touch OK. It's going to take a second. Once it does, it's going to open it up in Notability. So now, of course, like we talked about before, I can go ahead and I can rename it however I'd like. So I'm going to leave this one, Chapter 2. Oh, it's already taken. So let me do 21. Done. Now I've got that note. Now the important part is this is a 21-page note. So in order to see some of the other pages that are there, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a bunch of little pieces of paper. And the cool part about that is now I can go ahead and I can scroll through. So let's say my teacher wants me to work on page number 5. I can go to page 5, and once I touch it, it opens up page 5. So here becomes the real problem. So let's say I want to scroll down a little bit. I can hide it by retouching it. If I want to scroll down a little bit to see the lower part of the page, I go to scroll down, and it's writing. The most important thing you need to know, I'm going to go to my eraser and erase it, about Notability is that if you want to scroll down in Notability, you have to use 2 fingers at the same time. So watch what happens. Now, I can use 2 fingers to scroll down the page and find what I need. Okay? Once I find that page that I need, I can start editing. And we talked about a little bit earlier, is that let's say I want to add a text box. I can go ahead and add that text box, holding my finger down, and I can move that text box wherever I need it. And I just touch off of it together. The other part is you have to keep in mind a couple of other tools that are available. One of them is the microphone. So ultimately, you could click on the microphone and record, do a voice recording all the way or over your note. If by fault when you chose notability and it asked you, do you want notability to be able to access your microphone? If you clicked no, then you're going to have to go into your iPad settings, into privacy and microphone, and just give that little slide over. Slide the bar to green to make sure that notability is available to use your microphone. In this case, I'm going to skip on that one. One of the important things that you're going to use a lot is that plus. Okay. When you use a plus, you can take a photo. So if I hit take a photo, it's going to make my camera live. And I can go ahead and if you didn't give an OK for notability to access your camera, you might have to go into settings and do the same thing you did before. But you'd be able to use your camera, take a picture, and then add that to your note. You can also choose photo, and that's going to go ahead and give you some options as far as pictures that are stored locally on your iPad. So let's say I want to add a picture. I can go ahead and add it. I can move it wherever I want by using that thing. Let me go over here. I can put my picture wherever I want to put it. Okay. So now I can go back and use the tools that we talked about before where I can draw. Okay, that one's way too big, so I can shrink that down, and I can draw like that. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. I can also add other things. So for instance, I can add a figure. And I have a bunch of different options where I can use some of the tools at the top here to draw my figure. Or I can just draw my own figure. Let me go back a little bit. I'm going to use the back button a couple times, so I'm going to go like this. When I'm done, I hit done, and there I go. I have my item I just drew. I can text wrap it, so if I want to put it in some text that I'm typing, the text goes around it. I can cut, I can copy, I can delete, I can edit, I can do all those great things. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. I can also take stickies, so if I want to put sticky notes, let's say my teacher gave me some information and I want to write myself a little sticky note, I can go ahead and do that. If I want a blank sticky note, I can put that sticky note wherever I want it, and then I can type right on it. So I can just add a text box on it, or I can write on it if I want, and that gives myself some, or I can send reminders to myself. So other options are you can add web clips. So if you wanted to link to someplace on the internet, if you wanted to link to a YouTube video, if you wanted to search Wikipedia, if you wanted to search Google, you can add things that way. Hit done. And done again. One of the really cool things is, let me create a new note for this one. So before I show you that, I'm going to hop back out to my library. I'm going to make myself a new note. And I want to show you this tool right here, which is the wrench. If I touch on paper, and math teachers absolutely love this, but if I touch on that, I can choose graph paper. And now, if I wanted to, and let me make sure my pencil's small enough, I could actually write on my note. Okay, so you can use your own graph paper. In addition to that, I can go ahead and let me do this. Let's say you want to try different paper. You want your note background to look like that. If I want to get rid of those grids, I just click on the top. Now if I want to take notes on a piece of paper like this, I can write and my paper looks like that. I can also continue to scroll down. So I've got a bunch of pages. If I want to duplicate a page, so if I click off of that and if I click back on it, let's say I have a page the way I like it and I want to duplicate it many, many times, all I have to do is click on this button right here and I can go ahead and hit the plus button. I can add a page above, I can add a page below. That part is really cool. In addition, let me go back to my note that I imported. Actually, that's not that one. Let me go back to this geometry book that I have here. If I click on my notes, I can also delete a page. So let's say I don't need page 10, or my teacher tells me you have to delete page 10. I can hit the X, and I can delete the page. One of the most important things you're also going to need to know about notability is how you can go ahead and drop back those assignments to your teachers. So in this case, my geometry chapter 21, let's say I worked on my worksheet, and I've finished it, and it's just the way I want to do it. What I can do is I can go ahead and hit the box with the arrow. Once I hit the box with the arrow, I have a bunch of different options. So there's email, Dropbox, Google Drive if I need to send it. Well, the one that you're going to use when you're going to drop back to a teacher is the one that says Open In, because what we don't see is Schoology. So if I click on Open In, it's going to say, okay, you want to send this in a different manner. How do you want to send it? What we usually do, unless it's a recording, like if it's an audio recording, you would have to slide that on. In this case, or in your cases, you will always use PDF. So I want to open it as a PDF. That's the way it's set. If I wanted to send it to my teacher as a notability file, I can also change it to notability. So there might be some reasons that you may want to do that if your teacher has an assignment where she wants to teach you how to use notability and make sure that you know how to use the tools. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back. I want to open that note in, and it's going to take a second. And what it's going to do is it's going to compress that file. So in a second, you'll see it flip back. And then I have a bunch of different options. There we go. So I have a bunch of different options. So now the great part about this is I can send it to pretty much any app that's on my iPad. So you guys are going to have to be creative, and let's say you want to take your notability and you want to open it up and explain everything, however you want to use it. You can open it in any other app that's not listed in the initial menu. But what you can do is you can open it in Schoology. So once I open it up in Schoology, and I am the teacher of the class, but normally if your teacher had sent you a PDF, you wouldn't see drop back to student, you would see drop back to assignment. So once you'd hit drop back to assignment, it would drop it right back into the teacher's folder, and you've now turned in the item that you were working on in school or in Notability. So those are the basics of Notability. There's going to be a lot more advanced things coming out. You guys are going to learn a ton on your own. You're going to be using this every day in almost every single class. We recommend that you use this for all your note-taking. And again, teachers are going to be sending you all their content, and just make sure that you're, number one, that you've organized all your folders. Number two, make sure you've set it to back up to your Google Drive. Make sure that it's set to backup as a note, so as we talked about earlier, you can still manipulate all the notes that you've made. Once you've done those things, we encourage you to try different things, import pictures, change files, maybe work with audio, and just get used to using Notability on a daily basis.